Welcome to the Inside Silverstone podcast, a business-focused podcast covering all things tech, engineering and innovation. Hosted by me, Chris Broome, a huge tech, motorsport and gaming fan, and also the owner of Longhurst, a firm of lifestyle financial planners and independent financial advisors located in Silverstone, Northamptonshire. This is a series of unscripted and unpolished conversations with leading business owners, thought leaders and high-tech talent where we discuss their experiences within the Silverstone business and motorsport region. We will also be asking them to share their knowledge, insight and their thoughts on the future just for you. If you're looking to learn more about the Silverstone high growth region and commercially connect with like-minded peers, you've definitely come to the right place. Welcome to Inside Silverstone. Welcome to the next edition of Inside Silverstone. My name is Chris Broome and I am your host. Today I am delighted to have a collaborative interview with two fine gentlemen by the names of Neil Morgan, who is MD of Good Fabrications, and Danson Joseph, who is Managing Director of Danecca. Guys, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much.
Guys, as is customary, as I always say and start off these interviews, I'd love to, if it's okay and I have your permission, just to run through a quick sort of career snapshot, just to explain to everybody that's listening, all our dear listeners, sort of the journey that you've been on to get where you are today.
It would be awkward if I said no at this point.
It would be incredibly awkward, and I would probably still read out your CV anyway. But yes, absolutely. But it's a very kind gesture to let me do that. So Neil, we'll start with yourself. So your background is, from what I've read on LinkedIn, and you've very kindly explained pre-interview starting, is predominantly in digital marketing. So from sort of 84 through to probably 08, involved in a number of businesses, from Reuters through to a couple of businesses that were your own. So NMMS as a founder, eSpace as a chairman, which sounds interesting. De facto, so I know, being in the financial world, about De facto, through to a few other firms, and then basically in 2008 you joined sort of family business on your sort of wife's side called Good Fabrications. Which is a fellow STC member alongside my firm Longhurst, which is one of the reasons you're here. That's how we met. So that's sort of your journey, but predominantly sort of digital, and now involved in the world of fabrications and motorsport and otherwise. And Danson, your background is engineering, basically. So, electrical engineering, power systems engineer, design manager, power supply engineer, and then a year or so ago, set up Danecca, where you are based on Silverstone Park, literally just around the corner from where this interview is taking place at the Innovation Centre. So my first question, and therefore probably the first question of all our listeners, is going to be, is why have I brought you both on the show together? So how do you guys know each other? And presumably there's a sort of story behind a sort of collaborative partnership, and your firms are presumably working with each other, dovetailing to produce something. So why don't you tell us a story? So how did you guys meet, and how do your businesses sort of work with each other? So maybe explain what your businesses do and sort of how you sort of dovetail.
Okay, so from a Good Fabs perspective, we're a fabrication company that's been going since the early 1980s. Really grew out. Our founder used to work for McLaren, doing a number of fabrication tasks, and then realised that he could probably make exhaust systems, for example, a lot more quickly if he wasn't in an F1 team.
Okay.
And so set up Good Fabs in the early 80s, and effectively offered his services to motorsport teams to make various items, which ended up after a couple of years being pretty much solely exhaust systems. Okay. And which are still the only sort of hand fabricated part on an F1 car. Everything else is made by machines, pretty much.
Right.
And still is today. So Good Fabrications now in 2019 has 30 people based down in Long Crendon, which is just outside Tame, near Aylesbury, about 45 minutes south of here, Silverstone. We take sheet metal, very lightweight, thin wall sheet metal, much of it Inconel, which is a sort of a form of stainless steel which works at very high temperatures, which obviously Formula One cars work at very high temperatures, so they don't melt. And we do a lot of that. Working for engine developers in Formula One, and also for the the top teams. And I think we've made F1 systems for F1 teams every year for the last 32 years.
Wonderful.
And we've got quite a strong history in the US as well. In the 1990s, we made a lot of systems for Indy Car. And I think in 1996, Indy 500, Good Fabs made every single system on the grid.
Boom.
And that's back in the days when the chassis were supplied by Lola and Reynard.
Are you still involved in the US market?
Yeah, we are. Yeah, we supply Nascar and Indy Car for various different levels, not necessarily the full exhaust, but we do heat shielding and sort of related fabrication tasks. So we got quite a good following. I just did an Instagram post this morning for Good Fabs, and we got much more followers in the States than we have over here.
Fantastic.
But then Instagram, everybody likes to show off their welding in the US.
Right, okay, that's the thing, is it?
Well, the US seems to be full of welders. Ask most people what a fabricator does in the UK, and they probably wouldn't know.
Agreed.
But it's
true.
very much it's part of the culture over there. After work, you get on your big welding set and you start melting wet metal. It's not a thing over here. But funny enough, the top fabricators for motorsport tend to be in the UK. So we do the best work, but not the most work.
There we are. All about quality, as opposed to quantity. And Danson, what does Danecca do? So what do you guys do?
Well, as a headline, it's battery system engineering. In my most immediate history, I was responsible for the battery on the Jaguar I-Pace. And our team is made predominantly from people from Jaguar Land Rover.
Okay.
And across the team, we have been responsible. People in Danecca now are basically had been responsible for the Range Rover hybrid battery, the Range Rover plug-in hybrid battery, and the Jaguar I-Pace. So covering a fair breadth of battery systems for automotive vehicles. But the key difference and where we are different to a lot of other companies in the area and broadly in the industry is that we are taking automotive principles and trying to apply it to smaller volume projects and niche projects that might not need the same level of durability, but still having that same engineering diligence. Which is quite different because in the motorsport world, for example, a lot of things are if they last for 6 months, you're happy.
Yes.
But when you're looking at a high performance vehicle, for instance, it's still a customer facing vehicle. And even though there are handfuls being made, it still has to deliver that same durability.
Sure. And
in order to deliver that from an engineering perspective, you have to go through the diligence. And automotive structures give you that sort of diligent framework to work through.
Okay, so on one hand we've got sort of battery focus in the future, and on the other hand we've got exhaust fabrication. Where's the synergy? So how are you guys? So we're both smiling at me. So what's the project? How are you guys, and what are you guys doing together?
It started off a little bit like exploratory, what could happen here, and I actually can't remember when exactly, but I went down to Tame and we started discussing how we could use the thin-walled metal technologies that Good Fab is really good at and bring that into the cooling systems of a battery.
Okay.
And that's the essence of it. That's in terms of hardware and project work, that's the one side of it. And that led into a discussion about, we actually want to do some cell testing. And in doing the cell testing, prove out that these systems can work. And so we established a cell testing facility.
Okay.
Now that, from our perspective, we've got the ability to promote that as a very significant value add, because very few battery engineering companies, even OEMs at many levels, have the ability to test their cells. Not large OEMs; they all have massive laboratories. But small vehicle manufacturers will not have their own powertrain teams for electric vehicles.
And this is testing on Silverstone Park. Okay.
So we've got the one venture, which is essentially the cell testing and testing facility. So we've got a 16-channel cell tester and a thermal chamber to go with it, so we can cycle from 195 degrees Celsius to minus 70.
Wow. Okay.
So well beyond the automotive spec that we'd need. And that gives us, as I said, that opportunity to say, when we start engineering, we actually know what the cells will do right at the beginning. And in fact, just prior to this, we were down at the facility testing a cell for one of our immediate projects. And in that immediate project, we'll also be looking to introduce the thin walled metals as part of the cooling infrastructure. And that gives us the advantage of bringing lightweight metals into a battery system.
Okay.
And it gives Good Fabs an opportunity to use what is really a very skilled craftsmanship on these sorts of projects.
Yeah, we have got a keen sort of strategic eye on the future. The way that not only motorsport but motoring in general is going is going electric.
Sure.
And even though I think motorsport will be running cars with exhaust for a long time, we've obviously got to be careful about what we do. And given that we're very much connected to the internal combustion engine, we wanted to see how we could get involved in the battery market. And this seemed to be a very interesting one because weirdly, I've got 2 electric cars. And one of them is an I-Pace. And the interesting thing about having an electric car is you're immediately aware of the range constraints based on temperature. Okay. So coming up here today, my car, I've got a BMW i3, for example, which is the shorter range vehicle. It's 4 years old now. It's only got 80 miles range most of the time. In the summer, it goes up to 100 miles. And then in the winter, these kind of months, it goes down to around 60. So I'm 30 miles away from here, 39 miles if I come up the M40. So I had to come the back way because of my range. So it's just something that you have to think about. And that's based on what temperature the battery is at. So if you can preheat the battery, for example, on an electric car, you can get an extra 10-20% range out of it potentially. And then on the other level, if your battery gets too hot, then your performance is affected.
And presumably there's also a weight issue as well, so trying to make the batteries as lighter as possible so that you get longer distance and durability, I guess. Yeah,
so there's you're looking to try and maintain them for their life, and I think that's what I was mentioning before is we've got a banner that we took to a show, in fact the battery show last year, and we're there again this year in Stuttgart. And it said anyone can make a battery, and we're not precious about that. Anyone can make a battery. I had a carpenter come in and put stairs in our house, and he said, I bought some of these cells off eBay, and I stuck them together and sort of put them in my motorcycle. So anyone can do it. And it's not deriding him or anything he can do, but the fact is it's not impossible. But when you're talking about something that costs 20,000, 30,000, 100,000 pounds, that thing has to last. And so that principle is, how do you make those batteries last? And if you have a decent cooling system, you're basically putting them in this sort of bubble of their best operating window.
And so from a testing perspective, I guess, this is just me being a layman, but I guess it can be quite dangerous testing batteries. I mean, from a heat perspective, I guess from that range you've said, from the sort of top temperature down to the bottom, and presumably these things can...
Yeah, we don't test... What you want to test is the operational range, which is well within the safety range. There's a secondary type of test, and they're actually quite fun, which is... We've done quite a few over December, January, and that's where you set fire to them purposefully. So the last one was last week Friday, where we basically put heater rods on the cells and set them off. So in that case, we used Nissan Leaf modules and took the cells apart, put the rods on, had a 230 volt heater system that we rigged up, and then we were able to measure all the temperatures inside and outside the battery and prove that as a structure it will survive any potential internal fire. There's the other one, which is a lot more fun to watch, which is good in the middle of winter, which is where you put 80 litres of petrol and light it,
Wow.
And you put the battery into it, and that's a UN regulation. It was phenomenal because you're sitting there and you're like, well, this is cold. I was bitterly cold on that day. It was really, really cold. And they lit the fire, and it was like standing in front of the sun or something. It was just huge heat. It was so hot actually that the concrete that the rails were mounted on started popping off.
Oh my God.
Yeah, so it was very interesting to see. But that's the next level or the next step of testing that is potentially a bit more dangerous. But it is also what we want to try and bring to this area as an alternative to going to some of the more established testing facilities. That's
going to be my next question. So, for firms that are looking for this type of testing, is there anything else around here? And what's the opportunity for you guys? Presumably there is a big opportunity here within Silverstone.
Yeah. Silverstone's has a lot of space, and for most of those sorts of tests, space is the issue. For instance, Warwick University is a very prominent battery engineering centre in the UK. They get a lot of government grants to do battery engineering, and they've got a lot of equipment. But they're also in the middle of, or south end of Coventry, so you can't really go set fire to a battery in that environment. So most of the facilities for that sort of abuse testing are actually out a little bit in the sticks, like Mara and Millbrook.
Right. Okay. And so what you're saying is now within Silverstone Park and sort of South Northamptonshire, there is a testing spot now where you guys can oversee that.
Yeah, so cell testing definitely.
Yeah.
And we're looking to bring the more abuse case, the things where we can make use of Silverstone's immense space. We're in discussions with Silverstone for that now.
Okay.
And one of the reasons we got involved in the cell testing part, which doesn't include our expertise, is that as a company that's been operating for 30 odd years, we've got quite a good balance sheet. So when it comes to funding equipment, we were better able to do that than Danson was, having a company that's only been operational less than 2 years.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it was far more straightforward for us to effectively provide the finance for that. We get paid in dollars. All this kit had to come over from the States.
Okay.
It doesn't exist here otherwise.
Sure.
So Danson organised the premises, we organised the kit, and paid for it. And so working together, that seemed that again was a sensible collaboration. Based on our strengths, really.
That was going to be my next question, was regarding obviously synergy between the firms, and so you guys met, I think, from one of the STC events. Is that right? You maybe at an ACES event. Was that right?
Yeah, that's right. I attended the event, which was all about sort of electric and autonomous and shared sort of vehicle use. And Danson was speaking there, actually.
Aha, right.
Speakers.
Okay, that makes sense.
In the audience as Good Fabrications as an STC member.
Sure.
Even though we're not on the site, we're within an hour of the place, and we recognise that that the cluster had a number of, if not customers, potentially collaboration opportunities. And if we were as a company looking for what we should be doing in the future, it made sense to come along.
To be here.
And having a couple of electric cars as well, I felt that I could add something to it.
Yeah. And so feedback on the STC, I guess, is and Silverstone as a business region is very positive for you. So you found huge value over the last few years with joining the STC, but also working and partnering up with local firms here, I guess.
Yeah, I think talking to other companies about what they're doing, you can't fail to have an interesting conversation. If you don't, I mean, there are a whole load of events and exhibitions, for example, that you think, oh, that's not going to be right for me. But I mean, every single time I've ever been to some sort of networking event, however apparently irrelevant, there's always one discussion that you have, which you can take forward. And so this provided this one. I don't think that would have happened if it hadn't have been for the STC.
And Danson, how's life been on Silverstone Park? So you obviously
it's been really good. I think one of the benefits of this area generally is that you have companies that each have their specific focus. It's not really a behemoth here that's trying to be everything.
Yes.
And I think that's a bit of a dangerous thing, because when you do have that, you've got no real scope for innovation in the environment. So there are so many companies within sort of an hour, as you say, from this location that can provide very specific elements of expertise. As long as you're able to bring those together, there's a lot of opportunity for collaboration. So yeah, it's a good spot to be.
Just picking up on something you said a few minutes ago regarding sort of funding and sort of grants. So, have you guys had experience of positive or negative with grants and applying for grants with what you're doing as a project? Is there anything there?
Certainly when we came up with the idea of the cell testing facility, we felt that was slap bang in the area where there would be grant funding. So we did apply for 2 grants. There were a number that we probably could have gone for, and we felt that this was something that would probably get funded because we were looking at investing in equipment, bringing it over from the US, creating a facility here in the UK, and we were certainly told that if this was done by an SME as opposed to some sort of academic institution, we would be pretty much in the frame for it. As it happens, we didn't get the grants, but we decided that we were behind this and we'd spend our own money. Perhaps we should have, looking back on it, we should have probably employed a professional grant writer to do that. Probably should have spent more time on it, perhaps. But as 2 businesses who are pretty busy and getting on with life, it was probably more of an authentic sort of approach that we took, which maybe wasn't the best one looking back on it.
We haven't secured any grant funding, but I look at the positive of that is that many of the companies that I have seen securing grant funding end up with a product that's not actually marketable because it's a product that has been defined so as to secure funding.
Right. Okay, that makes sense.
And so where we're going ahead is we have a commercial enterprise that we want to make use of. And if we are able to get some grant funding to assist it and facilitate it a bit more, great. But we're not going to change the tiger stripes, and
sure.
to make it something it's not.
You're not going to deviate away from your plan, and your objectives to secure the funding.
Hopefully, assuming that we're successful, then we will need more, and we will need bigger facilities and more investment, and at that point we will perhaps be a more credible option for the grant bodies.
And in relation to either potential customers that you're looking to attract or other strategic partnerships like the one you've created between yourselves, what are you looking for? So for people listening to this who themselves might be able to join the party or use your services, or may know of a business where I think actually these guys might be a really good fit, what sort of message that we could promote whilst we've got airtime here to do that? So sort of what customers are you looking for, and potential strategic partnerships to help you on your journey?
Well, the key customer that we're looking for at this point is someone who has a project, doesn't really know how to implement it, wants to either create a new electric vehicle or has something that they would like to electrify, for instance, classic vehicles.
Okay.
And it is typically a low volume product, but they want something credible. They don't want a sort of student backyard mechanic thrown together. Yes, it will work, but for how long is unknown. Those are the sorts of projects we're looking for.
Okay.
And when we then add the front end engineering of that, which includes the testing, we get a product that's more credible because we're able to actually show, look, we've taken what you've suggested this product will be used as. We've run it through our testing, our pre-engineering testing. We've shown that the cells that we are looking to use will satisfy that requirement. And therefore, the engineering of the structure around it is simply a way of encapsulating the cells that we know will deliver the performance you're looking for.
There it is. And from not necessarily a Silverstone Park or STC, but wider sort of collaborative, are there other businesses that could help you on your journey? Are there opportunities there to partner up or to seek anything else to help you?
Always looking for
Sure.
new things. I mean, we've got a partnership with a company in the States. We're actually doing some work for them, but we'll also be using their products in the hypercar project that we're working on, and that gives, we believe very strongly that although we're a small company, our strength actually comes from our partnerships.
Sure.
That's what this site gives us, and this location is ability to draw on companies that are located here but are also related to this area, and bring in the best strengths. There's no point in Danecca being a fabrication company. There's also no point in Danecca being let's say an accounting firm and a fluid dynamics company, for example. But what we do well, and what we want to make sure of is that the partners that we work with do their bits well, such that as a whole, it's better actually than having an enormous team where you've essentially got mediocrity because you're just trying to cover every pitch.
I mean, so for example, in our field, we use a lot of 3D printed parts.
Yes.
There's a lot of 3D printed metal now. Exhaust systems used to be totally fabricated. Now they're fabricated, machined, and 3D printed, and we assemble all of those. And we also use our own 3D printed parts as measuring tools, for example, to get things absolutely right. But we don't actually do any 3D printing ourselves. It's like Danson said, if we tried to do 3D printing, we would be muddling along.
You can't be the jack of all trades, right?
Exactly.
So you're going to be the master in your field, be the best of it, and find other masters.
Yeah. So we're working with a number of 3D printing companies at a pretty high level, but we don't do it ourselves. Equally with the battery testing, I guess there's refrigeration, there's fire, there's a number of different areas which you can imagine we need to work with in order to get it all right. And the packaging is interesting because my I-Pace or BMW electric car batteries, they're just flat. Because they've been made as proper electric cars without having engines, whereas a lot of the projects we're looking at we're looking like we've got to produce batteries which are effectively engine shaped, because that's the space you get.
That's what you got to fill.
Exactly.
Yeah, especially if it's the classic cars and stuff.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay. I'm conscious of time because I know Danson's got to go to a meeting. So let's sort of start closing off the interview so that you can both be on your way. So before I get into the last couple of questions, is there anything that I haven't asked that you specifically wanted to cover off whilst you're here with me? Anything you wanted to talk about work-wise, business-wise, or have we covered it all off?
I think it's been a pretty good conversation about what we do.
Cool. Right. Couple of last questions. First one's always about embarrassing mistakes. This is the moment the guests normally sort of cringe and sort of sit in their chair worrying what to say, but I love to learn and to share embarrassing stories and embarrassing mistakes. First of all, so we can sort of laugh at ourselves, but also so you can just learn from it, because we've all had some absolutely cool, because I'm no doubt. I haven't actually disclosed any of mine yet. That'll probably come in a much later interview. If Ros can ever pin me down for that interview. So do you have anything in your locker, so for Neil or for Danson, that you've ever, whether it's business related or life, that we could sort of just laugh at you and learn from? Anything?
Well, actually, when we were talking earlier about sort of audio issues and equipment type issues, I'd been doing the last few years some talks to sort of Chinese delegations who sort of come over to find out about various things about British industry. And you always get put up in a top of a hotel in Wembley somewhere, and you bring along your PowerPoint presentation. And normally I found that because these presentations are simultaneously translated, you can't actually put up elaborate slides with lots of stuff on there, because unless you can read English, which most of them can't, then it's not much point. So I do quite a lot of video.
Okay.
And so you've got 4 hours worth of content to get over, because there's a whole day talking to one of these delegations. And the most embarrassing thing was when I didn't bring the effect, that the leads which allowed audio.
Yeah.
So then I've got so my videos, become silent and part meaningless, and you've got a whole day's worth of content to go through with a Chinese delegation, and you have to wing it. Winging it when you've got simultaneous translation is very difficult.
But what was the end outcome of that event?
They loved it.
Of course, you're not going to say anything else apart from that. And just so the listeners understand, I stupidly forgot to bring the third mic for this podcast interview, so we're currently sort of sharing mics, so sound quality hopefully will be okay once the team crack on. So that's what that was referring to.
Yeah, so in the end, I'll tell you what, I normally hook up my iPhone.
Yes.
Unfortunately, I didn't have the lead for that, so I could then go through all the apps on my iPhone, and that was a lot more interesting for Chinese people, particularly looking at IT, where they can't see things like Facebook and they can't see most of the IT applications we've got. So I think I entertained for about 2 hours just going through the apps on my iPhone.
There it is. Danson, what have you got? Is there anything in your locker?
Interesting one. So I used to work on mining projects back in South Africa, and I used to go to platinum mines quite a bit.
Okay.
And there was one project where we were installing energy monitors on all the different feeders into different parts of the mine. These are huge mines, huge expanses. Our platinum mine ends up with a slurry, and if you stop the motors, the slurry settles, and it's a real pain to start them up again. In fact, you have to break them down. So anyway, I was installing these monitors, and I went and connected something. I can't remember the details. It's about 8-9 years ago. And all of a sudden it's like, wow! You just hear everything sort of start shutting down. And I just remember thinking, oh.
And that was just something that you plugged in, basically shut it all down.
Yeah, shut down a platinum mine in South Africa. Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to leave that one where it is. I don't want to know the rest of the outcome of that. What a fantastic story. Gentlemen, thank you very, very much. Last question, and then I'll let you go, especially Danson, because you've got to run off. So, last question has changed. Season 1 used to be, what bit of life advice could you give Chris Broome as the host? Because I'm selfish, I want to know what bit of advice I could get. But we've moved on in hope to try and pass down some of our wisdom to other business owners, but also to the next generation. So there's a number of schools in partnership with the Gaia Innovation project. So hopefully there are some students listening to this. So this is the reason for the next question, which is, you're both clearly experts in your field and have been doing it for a very long time. If you were to go back to your sort of younger self, I was going to say with sort of more hair, less grey hair and whatever else, as I look at myself when I say that. But if you were to go back and speak to your younger self, what one bit of advice would you give yourself?
I think going into business for the first time, I would say just hang on to every single bit of money you've got and don't spend it until you absolutely have to, which might sound an obvious thing to do, but it's very tempting when you start up a business to start spending money to make you feel like you're doing business. And this might be as simple as business cards, for example. Is that an expenditure you really need? But I remember the company that I did back in the sort of days of the early internet, I really wanted to sort of be involved, and I ended up buying a server when all I needed was the cheapest PC in the world. And it was just an example of making you feel like you're more prepared. It's a bit like when before pregnancy, I think sort of your average couple expecting a baby spends about £1,500 on the baby before it even arrives. And it's all about making yourself feel more prepared, but actually once you've got it there, you probably don't use half of it. Yeah. So just keep your powder dry.
Really, really sage advice. Really good bit of advice. That I when I opened my first ever business when I was in my sort of late 20s, I ended up going into an office straight away when I didn't need to go into an office, and you spend sort of £12,000-15,000 just on rental costs in a year, and you think actually I could have just run it from one of the spare rooms or hot desk somewhere or whatever else. So really good advice. Danson.
For me, it's probably, and I'll probably say this incorrectly, but I believe there's a northerner saying "Sha Bain's getting out," and it's something that I started living by last year when I was still the year before when I was still at Jaguar, basically, if you don't ask, you're not going to get it.
Yeah.
So don't worry, don't be rude, but don't worry about, I don't know if they'll still like me if I ask that or whatever. You go out and ask. The worst thing that can happen is they say no. And just go out. And I remember I was in Poland in a meeting for the iPlace, and I walked out and I had a mortgage certificate, a mortgage renewal form in my hand, and I had to phone the mortgage company. And out the next door walked out the president of LG Chem. And I thought, well, I know what I want to do. I want to start this battery company. He's the president of a cell company. I'm going to go tell him what I want to do. And I mean, this is like completely different levels. It's like speaking to what Steve Jobs or something like that. And I walked up to him and said, "This is what I want to do," and he was great. He was absolutely fantastic. Yeah, Sarbanes getting out. I think that's something to live by.
Yeah.
And successful people love, young people who are keen and interesting. I think young people today get probably quite a lot of stick for being millennials and sort of wanting to have jobs which they really enjoy. If you find somebody who really comes and bugs you and does all that, people love it.
Yeah, as long as they're brave enough. So I've gone into to Kingsthorpe College in December and January, and I said, be brave. Employers are going to love nothing more than you putting together a CV or just contacting them and say, "Can I have some work experience?" Imminently impressive that you've had the courage to do that. So, yeah, really, really good advice, gentlemen. That's it. We're 35 minutes in. Interview's over. So thank you very much for coming on.
Thank you.
Thanks for your time.
Love the story, love the journey. We'll definitely want to get you both back on in the next year and a half or so, just to hear really how the projects are going, sort of regionally. Good luck.
Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Cheers. The Inside Silverstone podcast is produced by the team at Longhurst for the benefit of those with a passion for all things tech, engineering and innovation. For more information, please visit longhurst.co.uk/Inside Silverstone, whilst also remembering to give us a 5 out of 5 star rating on iTunes. Please note that neither Chris Broome or Longhurst work for Silverstone Park, Silverstone Circuit or Silverstone Technology Cluster.